Finally, the chains were broken. He could start cultivating. Ling Han had been clawing at the walls for 3 agonizing days, but that was nothing compared to the 10,000-year silence he had endured in the void. The moment he felt his foundation knit back together, he didn't waste a heartbeat. He sat cross-legged, ready to tear into the world's energy. But as he prepared to ignite the 5 elements heaven-grade skill, he stopped. He stood, opened his door, and stepped into the open courtyard. Inside, Lu Yutong was fighting her own battle, submerged in the deep seclusion of her breakthrough. If he unleashed his power here, the sheer violence of his spiritual intake would shatter the local environment and potentially cripple her progress. "See, what a merciful master I am," he mused darkly. He sat in the center of the vast, empty courtyard. It was his father's domain, stripped of servants and prying eyes. Only the wind remained. "Come then. Let me see what an immortal grade spirit base can truly do." With a silent roar of intent, Ling Han's spirit base erupted like a blooming lotus of the apocalypse. Gold, wood, water, fire, earth, the 5 fundamental forces of the universe, rushed toward him like a tidal wave. They didn't just flow, they crashed into him like a starving beast finding a fresh kill. Normally, a cultivator is a specialist. They pick one element and ignore the rest because the human body is too frail to balance conflicting energies. But the 5 elements mix chaos lotus was different. It didn't pick a side. It devoured the entire spectrum, using the natural cycle of reinforcement and destruction to forge a perfect, terrifying equilibrium. But absorbing it was just the beginning. Refining it was the true nightmare. The 5 elements heaven-grade skill required a mind like a razor. One slip, one moment of unfocused thought, and the clashing energies would turn his internal organs into soup. Instant, agonizing death was the price of failure. Luckily, Ling Han was a god in a boy's skin. Immortal spirit base. Heaven-grade skill. Absolute mental control. His cultivation speed didn't just accelerate, it took flight. Spiritual chi screamed into his pores, turning into raw origin power that hammered against his flesh, blood, and bones. Since he hadn't opened his dantian yet, he forced the energy into his very cells. Middle period of the 2nd layer. Late period. Peak. Crack. With a violent shudder of his frame, he smashed through the barrier. 3rd layer of body refining. So fast, in his previous life, with a high heaven-grade base, this jump took 12 days. But back then, he was using a pathetic yellow-grade manual. Now, he was standing on the shoulders of a titan. He didn't stop, he pushed harder. He squeezed the atmosphere dry, refining every scrap of chi into his own lethal essence. Early 3rd layer. Middle. Late. Peak. In just a few hours, he hit the ceiling of the early stage of body refining. His mental energy was fraying at the edges. The strain of keeping 5 elements from exploding was starting to take its toll. If he kept going, he risked a backlash that could leave him a vegetable. But the 4th layer was the start of the middle stage, a qualitative leap in power. He wanted it, now. "Break," he growled. His body convulsed. A shockwave of pure energy rippled through his muscles. The bottleneck didn't just break, it disintegrated. 4th layer of body refining. He allowed himself a cold, satisfied smile. Consecutively breaking through 2 layers in a single night was a feat that would make geniuses vomit blood and envy. And because of the purity of his heaven-grade skill, his 4th layer strength was dense enough to crush a 6th layer warrior like a grape. "Sleep," he commanded himself. He collapsed onto the bed, falling into a predatory slumber, 70% alert, ready to kill at the slightest sound. The night passed in a blur of healing. He was jolted awake not by an assassin, but by a violent tremor in the air. He sat up, his eyes cold and lethal, before realizing the source. It was Lu Yutong. She had done it. The curtain parted. Lu Yutong stepped out, the air around her vibrating with an unstable, raw power. She hadn't learned to bottle it up yet. "I broke through," she announced, her face flushed with a rare, beaming pride. 3 days to jump from the 8th to the 9th layer of element gathering. The most brutal transition in that tier. She felt like a goddess. She looked at Ling Han, her chest swelling, waiting for the praise she felt she had earned. But the smile died on her face. Her pride turned to ash. Her jaw dropped as she stared at the boy on the bed as if he were a demon crawled up from the abyss. You're already at the 4th layer of body refining?" She did the math in her head, and it made her dizzy. His medicine arrived yesterday morning. Between his recovery and this moment, only 24 hours had passed. 1 day. 2 layers. The world called him a piece of trash. If he was trash, then what was she? What were the masters of the empire? The 4th layer. Her voice was a pathetic tremble. A day ago, she would have sneered at such a low level. But to see him do it in a single sun cycle was the most terrifying joke she had ever heard. Ling Han just looked at her, his expression utterly flat. "That's right," he said, his tone dripping with a bored indifference. "What of it?" Lu Yutong felt like she was going insane. "What of it? You just spat in the face of the laws of nature." Pound, 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 pound. A frantic, desperate hammering exploded against the door, shattering the silence. Ling Han ripped the door open to find a young servant gasping for air. He had given strict orders. No one disturbs him unless the world is ending. "What is it?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "The clan head. He's back. He's home." A jolt of raw electricity surged through Ling Han's veins. It wasn't just his mind. His very cells screamed with an instinctive, primal urge to see this man. "Father," he whispered. He had inherited this boy's skin, but he had also inherited the blood, the legacy, and the heavy burden of his name. He turned to Lu Yutong, a sharp, knowing smile on his face. "Yutong, come. You're meeting my father." A crimson flush scorched Lu Yutong's cheeks. She felt a sudden, suffocating panic, like a new bride being dragged to meet her in-laws for the first time. Gods, she cursed inwardly, spitting on the thought. Why was she feeling this? There was nothing between them. He was just a brat who held her fate in his hands. "Where is he?" Ling Han barked at the servant, the main hall. Ling Han didn't walk, he ran. The further he moved, the more the longing in his chest felt like a physical ache. He burst into the hall and saw him. A man of 40, standing like a mountain. Tall, broad-shouldered, and radiating a powerful, masculine aura that commanded the very air. In that instant, Ling Han couldn't tell if it was the body's memory or his own soul, an orphan in his past life, starved for the love of a family. His vision blurred, the sting of tears prickling his eyes. The blood tie was undeniable. "Father," he cried out. "Hanner." Ling Dongxing's laugh was a roar of pure joy. He moved with the speed of a predator to pull Ling Han into a crushing embrace. But suddenly, he pulled back, his face clouding with confusion. "Why are you here? You should have been at Hu Yang Academy days ago." This is what a father feels like." Ling Han let himself be swallowed by the warmth of the embrace. In his past life, a man with Ling Dongxing's meager cultivation wouldn't even be worth a glance, but now, he was shaken to his very core. He finally let the ghost of his past life go, embracing the reality of a father who would literally walk into hell for him. He wiped his eyes, shaking his head with a stubborn set to his jaw. "I'm not going. I don't want the academy." "What?" Ling Dongxing's voice hardened. He knew his son's spirit base was garbage. He had bled and suffered to secure that spot, hoping the academy's limitless resources could force his son into the element-gathering tier so he could finally rest easy. "Hanner, you weren't born with talent, but if you've lost your will to fight, then you are truly lost." Ling Han couldn't tell him the truth. He couldn't say he had the memories of a god and a technique that took 10 millennia to master. If he told him he was the Alchemy Emperor reborn, his father would think he'd been possessed by a demon. "Yu Tong, come here," Ling Han said, waving her over to change the subject before his father exploded. "Father, this is Lu Yutong." "I greet the head of the Ling clan," she said, bowing with the perfect, tempered grace of a junior. Ling Dongxing froze. He could feel it immediately. She was a martial artist of the 9th layer of element gathering. She was a peer to him. She had no reason to bow to a man of his standing. Wait, could it be? His eyes lit up with a sudden, wild hope. Did my son catch this girl's eye? She was barely 18 and already at the peak of her tier. A monster of talent. If Ling Han had a woman like this at his side, his lack of talent didn't matter. No wonder the brat didn't want to leave. He's a romantic, just like his old man. You little rascal. Ling Dongxing glared at his son with newfound respect, then turned back to her. Miss, where do you hail from? The Lu clan of the imperial city, she replied softly. Ling Dongxing's heart nearly stopped. The Lu clan. One of the 8 great pillars of the empire. A power second only to the throne itself. How? Wait. You're the one the academy sent to fetch him, aren't you? I am, clan head. Ling Dongxing looked at his son. The boy is a legend. He had 10 days to fetch a messenger, and he turned a goddess into his shadow? Father, I want to stay with you for a while. The academy can wait, Ling Han said, trying to ground the conversation before it spun out of control. Ling Dongxing laughed, his chest swelling with pride. Good, fine. If the girl is staying, you stay. He reached out to pat Ling Han's shoulder, but the moment his hand landed, his expression shattered into pure shock. Hanner, your breath. You've broken through. Finally, Lu Yutong thought with a grim satisfaction. Someone else gets to feel the heart attack I've been having. Yeah, I broke through, Ling Han said simply. I was gone for 10 days. You didn't just break through. You jumped 2 layers? Ling Dongxing looked like he was staring at a ghost. 2 layers in 10 days? This wasn't progress, it was a goddamned miracle? If his son was trash, then the rest of the world was filth. Lu Yutong watched the head of the Ling clan tremble, feeling a dark sense of relief. At least she wasn't the only one going crazy. It's acceptable, Ling Han said with a shrug. Both Ling Dongxing and Lu Yutong rolled their eyes in unison. Acceptable? Ha ha ha. Ling Dongxing's roar shook the rafters. Let them talk. Let them call my son trash now. I'll break their teeth. Father, Ling Han said, his voice turning serious. I've had a fateful encounter. My life has changed. Ling Dongxing nodded, his eyes bright. He didn't care what the encounter was. All he saw was hope. A burning, violent hope that his son was no longer a lamb, but a wolf. Father, I will not fail you. I will drag this family's name into the light until it blinds the world. Ling Han's voice was a jagged blade of conviction. Good, good, good. That is the blood of Ling Dongxing speaking, the man roared, his eyes glistening with the raw, unchecked pride of a father who had finally found his heir. He didn't care what dark miracle had touched his son. All he knew was that the trash had burned away, leaving behind a wolf. He wanted to scream it from the rooftops until the earth shook. My son is no longer a joke. Lu Yutong stood in the periphery, her icy exterior thawing into something dangerously close to tears. Father, we need to speak. Privately. Ling Han's tone shifted, turning cold and focused. He dismissed Lu Yutong with a curt nod. Despite the progress they'd made, she hadn't yet earned a seat at the inner sanctum of his trust. Ling Dongxing raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. What is so secret that your own woman can't hear it? He clearly mistook their master-servant bond for something far more carnal. Ling Han ignored the comment. Father, show me your spirit base. Ling Dongxing's smile died instantly. His face went pale, then hardened into a mask of stone. Why? I intend to find the exact technique to maximize your power, Ling Han explained. He had thousands of manuals in his head, each capable of toppling a kingdom. Ling Dongxing exhaled a breath that sounded like a death rattle. He looked away, his voice hollow. It's useless, Hanner. My spirit base is gone. It was murdered long ago. What? Ling Han's voice was a low snarl. Fury, hot and predatory, boiled in his chest. A spirit base doesn't just vanish. Someone had to have crippled it. Someone had taken his father's future and ground it into the dirt. Who did this to you? This is a ghost from your mother's past, Ling Dongxing whispered, a brutal mix of tenderness, agony, and suppressed rage flickering across his face. Mother, Ling Han repeated. In this body's memories, his mother was a shadow, a woman said to have died in childbirth. Every time he'd asked, the subject was shut down like a tomb. I thought I would take this secret to my grave, Ling Dongxing said, his eyes burning with a sudden, desperate intensity. But now, Hanner, if you can reach the element gathering tier in 3 years, I will tell you the truth of her blood. She's alive. The realization hit Ling Han like a physical shock. The heavens weren't just giving him a father. They were giving him a chance to reclaim his whole soul. He let out a dark, boisterous laugh. 3 years? Father, you insult me. I don't need 3 years. I will be in the element gathering tier in 3 months. Ling Dongxing staggered back. 3 months? It took the greatest geniuses years to bridge that gap. But he looked into his son's eyes and saw something ancient, something that didn't know how to lie. Fine, Ling Dongxing growled, his voice trembling with a new hope. If you do it, I will tell you everything. And then, you will be the one to go and rescue her. Rescue? Ling Han's eyes narrowed. So she was a prisoner. Don't you want to pull her out of that hell with your own 2 hands, father? Ling Dongxing's fists clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. I have no path forward. My spirit base is a ruin. I'm a dead man walking, forced to eat pills just to keep my current power. To save her, you need the flower blossom tier. The flower blossom tier. The 6th level of martial divinity. In the Rain Country, such a person was a living god, capable of carving out their own empire by force. To the rest of the world, it was an impossible dream. To Ling Han, the former heaven tier sovereign, it was merely a matter of time. He had the immortal grade base, the indestructible scroll, and the mind of a god. He would be back at the pinnacle before his father's hair turned gray. Father, the spirit base is just another part of the body. If it can be broken, it can be mended. Show me. Ling Dongxing hesitated, then roared in his mind, "Let it be so!" He projected his dantian into the air. Ling Han's breath hitched. It was a low heaven-grade base. The broken-edged sword. Even crippled, it was a terrifying weapon of gold alignment. But the blade was gone, snapped off at the hilt, leaving a jagged, useless stump. It could no longer drink the world's qi. It was a corpse. But to the Alchemy Emperor, death was just a temporary state. "It can be fixed," Ling Han said, his voice absolute. "I don't have the ingredients now, but give me 2 years. I will craft the pill that restores your sword." Is that the truth?" Ling Dongxing's voice was a pathetic, hopeful rasp. "I do not lie to my blood," Ling Han promised. "In 2 years, we will march together and tear down whatever walls are holding her. Then we fight, together," Ling Dongxing shouted, his spirit finally reigniting after years of cold ash. But the older man added, his tone suddenly shifting back to a stern command, "You are still going to Hu Yang Academy. I won't hear another word." Ling Han sighed. His father still couldn't fathom that his son had already outgrown this town, this country, and every teacher in it. But Grey Cloud Town was a cage. It lacked the high-level materials he needed to fuel his ascension. If he had to go to the academy to get what he needed, then he would turn the academy into his personal playground. Ling Han laid it all bare. Every cowardly, backstabbing deed committed by Ling Zhongquan, his sons, and that arrogant brat of a grandson was dragged into the light. These vultures weren't going to crawl back into their holes. They were going to strike, and Ling Dongxing needed to be ready to break their necks when they did. "I understand." Ling Dongxing's voice was like grinding stone. He had spent years suppressing Ling Zhongquan, keeping that old dog on a short leash. Before his spirit base was slaughtered, Ling Dongxing was a god among men in this clan. A creature like Ling Zhongquan was nothing more than dust beneath his boots. "He dared to lay a finger on my son," Ling Dongxing snarled, his eyes flashing with a lethal, icy light. "If I don't beat him until he's bedridden for a month, I'll strip myself of the Ling name. So the old man is just as protective as I am." Ling Han felt a surge of grim satisfaction. He liked this side of his father. After a few more words, Ling Han retreated. He had no desire to watch the one-sided massacre. He had bigger problems to solve. He had a future to carve out of stone. He returned to his room, his mind a whirlwind of cold calculation. Cultivation was a black hole for resources. In his past life, he hit the heaven tier in a mere 200 years because he was a monster of alchemy. But even the greatest chef can't cook with air. He had the ancient knowledge of gods, but he was broke. The Ling clan's entire treasury was pocket change, compared to the cost of the high-grade ingredients he needed. To reach the pinnacle again, he needed to bleed the world of its gold. He had 2 paths to wealth. First, he could sell his secret techniques. He had scrolls that would make empires go to war. But he was weak, pathetic. Even if he released a heaven-grade manual now, he wouldn't get gold. He'd get a knife in the dark and a cage where they'd torture him for the rest of his secrets. He could only sell scraps, and that wasn't enough. That left the second path. Alchemy. It was his blood. It was his throne. Alchemists were the untouchable elite. To insult one was to invite the wrath of the masses. In Rain Country, the Heavens Medicine Pavilion held the world in a chokehold, while the rest were lapdogs for the great clans. Ling Han had no intention of being anyone's pet. He would be a ghost, a lone alchemist who appeared, sold his miracles for a king's ransom, and vanished. "I'll use the pill to fuel the blade." But his freedom was currently under siege. His father, fueled by a misplaced hope, was practically dragging him to the academy. Not Hu Yang, but the local Grey Cloud Academy. Ling Dongxing wanted his son to be a star. He wanted the world to stop laughing at his boy. Ling Han sighed. He would play along for a few days, show off just enough to satisfy his father's pride, and then reclaim his life. He also owed it to the ghost of the boy whose body he now inhabited to wipe away the trash label once and for all. He arrived at the academy with Lu Yutong at his side. She was a lethal beauty, a ninth-layer element-gathering warrior who could turn any man who looked at her wrong into a corpse. He let her wander. He had his own ghosts to face. As he reached the martial training court, his heart suddenly hammered against his ribs, a violent, unbidden throb of emotion that wasn't his. The obsession. The previous Ling Han had 2 anchors, his father and a woman named Shen Ziyan. 7 years ago, she was a 10-year-old beauty, and the engagement was a match made in heaven. The Ling clan was powerful, and the Shen clan was honored. Then came the test. Ling Han was trash, with a 5 elements disarray base, while Shen Ziyan was a prodigy with a high earth grade base. As she soared, he stayed in the mud. She eventually demanded her freedom, and the previous Ling Han, blinded by a pathetic, bone-deep love, let her go to save her the shame of being tied to a failure. Even after her betrayal, the boy had loved her from the shadows until the day he died. I had to kill this ghost, Ling Han thought, his jaw tightening. If I don't sever this link, it will become an inner demon that will rot my cultivation from the inside. One last look, he whispered to the void within him. After today, she is nothing to us. Ling Han stepped into the martial training court. There, at the center of the world, was a girl practicing her forms. Her movements were fluid, graceful as a fleeting deity in her white warrior's dress. A swarm of sycophants surrounded her, the girls watching with envious heat, the men wearing the glazed, intoxicated expressions of addicts. This was Shen Ziyan. This was the ghost he had come to exorcise. She was beautiful, yes, but compared to the lethal, chilling elegance of Lu Yutong, she was a dim candle next to the moon. Ling Han had walked among goddesses in his past life. This girl didn't even register as a spark. He took a deep, jagged breath. Within him, the final, pathetic remnants of his predecessor's obsession withered and died. The romantic fool was gone. Only the heaven-tier sovereign remained. The ghost of the trash had two anchors, his father and this girl. Now, both were severed. The original soul finally, truly departed, leaving Ling Han as the sole, absolute master of this flesh. In truth, the previous Ling Han was a coward who only dared to admire her from afar. Had the obsession been a demand to possess her, Ling Han would have had to tear his own soul apart to stay sane. Get out of here, the cold, sharp shout cut through the air. Shen Ziyan had stopped her movements, glaring at him with a gaze that treated him like filth on her boot. The arrogance was staggering. Did she think she owned the dirt beneath her feet? Ling Han didn't even feel anger. He felt nothing. This girl wasn't beautiful enough, nor talented enough, to merit a single heartbeat of his attention. He had seen what he needed to see. He turned his back on her, ready to leave her in the past. Stop right there. A young man in embroidered silk lunged forward, cutting off Ling Han's path. His face was twisted into a sneer of performative bravery. Didn't you hear Sister Shen? She told you to roll out of here? Why are you still using your legs? This was Cheng Hao, the second son of the town's other great clan, and a desperate dog barking for Shen Ziyan's scraps. He wanted to humiliate Ling Han to win a smile from the girl. It wasn't the first time. He loved bullying Ling Han. Breaking the son of the clan head gave him a pathetic sense of power. Ling Han's eyes turned into twin voids of lethal intent. The memories of his predecessor being beaten and mocked by this insect surged to the surface. He might have ignored a face in the crowd, but since Cheng Hao had crawled out to play, he wasn't going back in one piece. Are you looking for a grave? Ling Han's voice was a low, murderous rasp. Ha 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 ha. Ling trash. Are you threatening me? Cheng Hao's laughter was shrill, but his eyes turned cruel. A few days away and you've grown a spine? Let me snap it for you. The crowd erupted in mocking laughter. The trash was telling a joke. Ling Han didn't laugh. He walked toward Cheng Hao, his steps measured and heavy. What now? Going to beg? Scream it loud so everyone can hear you're pathetic. P.A. A sharp, violent slap cut the sentence in half. The laughter in the court died instantly, replaced by a suffocating silence. Cheng Hao's head snapped to the side. He clutched his face, his eyes wide with a staggering, shattered disbelief. He had been hit. By the trash. By the joke. The humiliation was a poison in his veins. His face contorted, blue veins bulging on his forehead like worms. You want to die that badly? You dare touch me? I can't hit you. Ling Han's voice was terrifyingly calm. He was just collecting the first installment of a debt long overdue. How dare you? Cheng Hao lost his mind. He lunged, his fist a blur of desperate rage. Ling Han was only at the fourth layer of body refining, 2 layers below his attacker. But he was a heaven-tier warrior in a boy's skin. He didn't see a fighter, he saw a slow-motion disaster. P.A. Ling Han's hand moved like a whip. He acted second but landed first, the slap echoing like a gunshot. Cheng Hao staggered, his own punch swinging wildly into empty air. Trash, Ling Han said softly, shaking his head. The crowd stood frozen. No one was laughing now. If the first slap was luck, the second was a goddamned execution. How could the Academy's greatest failure do this? Cheng Hao's eyes turned blood red. With a primal roar, he threw himself at Ling Han again. P.A. 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 It was a systematic deconstruction. No matter how Cheng Hao attacked, Ling Han's hand found his face. Each strike sent him stumbling, his momentum shattered, his pride being ground into the dust with every wet thwack of palm against skin. Look at his eyes. It's like he knows where the punch is going before Chen Hao even thinks it. Fourth layer. Maybe fifth, but that predictive power is demonic. The students whispered in terror. The secret was out. Ling Han was reading him like a child's book. Chen Hao was being slapped silly. His head was a buzzing hive of pain, his face swelling into a grotesque, purple mask. Only blind fury kept him upright, but every flailing strike was met with the same cold, rhythmic punishment. Finally, the fear broke through the rage. He stopped, he was trembling. But Ling Han wasn't finished. Pa, 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 pa. He rained down a litany of strikes until Chen Hao's lip split, spraying fresh blood across the stones. The boy looked like a slaughtered animal. No one dared to move. No one dared to breathe. I surrender. Stop, please. Don't hit me anymore, Chen Hao sobbed, his spirit broken. Ling Han paused, his hand hovering in the air. He looked down at the shivering heap of silk and blood. Kneel. The word was a hammer blow. Chen Hao's mind fractured. Kneel? To the trash? If he hit the ground, his life was over. The Chen clan would be the laughingstock of the province. This wasn't just a fight anymore. This was a blood feud between legacies. Even when he had beaten Ling Han in the past, he had never demanded the ultimate submission. But Ling Han wasn't asking. He was stating a fact of the new world. Ling Han, don't you dare go too far, Chen Hao snarled, his head snapping up. This was the line he couldn't cross. He would not yield. Ling Han let out a low, guttural laugh that made the skin of everyone nearby crawl. And here I was, he whispered, terrified you might actually give in, and leave me with no reason to slaughter you. He really wants to kill me. A violent shiver racked Chen Hao's entire frame. He looked into Ling Han's eyes and saw a void of merciless intent. This wasn't a bluff. He couldn't stop his limbs from shaking. Do you want to ignite a blood feud between our clans? Do you want to be remembered as the greatest sinner in the history of the Ling family? A pathetic, gutter-crawling clan like yours thinks it's worthy of standing in my shadow? Ling Han's voice dripped with pure disdain. If the Chen clan dares to twitch, I will erase every last one of you from the face of the earth. Boom. The courtyard erupted. The arrogance was staggering. The Ling and Chen clans were the twin pillars of Great Cloud Town, locked in a stalemate for generations because neither could destroy the other without rotting themselves. And here was the trash, claiming you would single-handedly wipe them out. It was a joke, it had to be. But as they looked at Ling Han, at the terrifying, godlike aura radiating from his body, the laughter died in their throats. For some reason, no one could speak. This was no longer the joke they once knew. This was something ancient, something lethal. Even some of the girls felt their knees go weak. This was raw, untamed power. You boast like a god, but my older brother alone would crush you like an insect, Chen Hao screamed, his face a mask of desperate defiance. He couldn't accept it. Ling Han was a toy, a thing to be broken. To be suppressed by a toy was a nightmare he refused to wake up from. Pa. Another slap exploded against his face. Ling Han loomed over him, his presence suffocating. So you really are begging for death? If the Chen clan wanted to play, Ling Han would end the game. With Zhu Yixin's devotion to him, calling in a gushing spring-tier warrior to liquidate a small-town clan was a trivial matter. If they wanted to burn, he would give them the fire. Cold sweat poured down Chen Hao's face. The pressure was physical, a crushing weight that smelled of the grave. He realized in that moment. The boy he used to bully was gone. In his place stood a god of death. Thud. His legs gave out. He hit the stone on his knees. Faced with the choice between a hollow pride and a very real grave, he threw his dignity into the dirt without a second thought. The crowd gasped. The second young master of the Chen clan. Kneeling? Before his sworn enemy? This was a stain on the Chen family crest that would never wash out. The overbearing bully was nothing more than a coward wrapped in silk. So cool, the girls shrieked, their infatuation turning into a fever. Ling Han. Is that enough? Chen Hao hissed through gritted teeth. His mind was already screaming for vengeance, imagining his brother tearing Ling Han apart. Crawl out. Ling Han's voice was as flat as a tombstone. What? Chen Hao gasped. Bam! Ling Han's boots slammed into Chen Hao's back, driving him face first toward the dirt. He was forced to catch himself on all fours. Ling Han, you dare insult me like this? I'll kill you, I'll kill you. Chen Hao was foaming at the mouth. Kneeling was one thing, but to be forced into the posture of a dog? To crawl through the dirt in front of everyone? So what if I insult you? You're trash, Ling Han said coldly. He remembered every bruise his predecessor had suffered. He remembered the mockery. This wasn't just a fight, it was a debt being paid in full. Crawl, or die here. Choose. The silence was absolute. The trash was forcing the son of a great clan to behave like an animal. He was freaking legendary. Chang Hao's willpower snapped. He couldn't face death. His hands moved, scratching at the stone as he began to shuffle forward on all fours. Ha 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 ha. The laughter started as a ripple and turned into a roar. The second young master, crawling like a mangy cur. Tears of pure humiliation gushed from Chang Hao's eyes. He swore a blood oath in his heart to see Ling Han flayed alive. After 10 agonizing steps, he scrambled to his feet and sprinted out of the court, a broken, sobbing mess. Clap. 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 The sound of slow applause drew every eye to the center. Shen Ziyan stepped forward, her face a mask of lofty contempt. An exciting performance, she said, her voice dripping with vanity. But do you really think this cheap theater moves me? I see through you, Ling Han. You're doing all of this just to get my attention. But the gap between us is an ocean. You don't even compare to my little finger. Being liked by someone as low as you is a personal insult. You really are a deluded idiot, Ling Han said, shaking his head. For the sake of the boy who once loved her, he had tried to be patient. But her narcissism was pathological. My talent is absolute, she boasted, her chin high. Next year, I join Huyan Academy. I will be a legend. You're a mere piece of trash. You're not qualified to look at me, not qualified, not qualified. She was a mental case. To her, every breath Ling Han took was a desperate plea for her love. Ling Han's eyes turned to ice. He was about to walk over and silence her, 9th layer of body refining or not, he'd break her, when a figure entered the court. Lu Yu Tong. She was a goddess walking among mortals. Every head turned. Every breath hitched. She didn't just have beauty, she had the bearing of an empress. Compared to her, Shen Ziyan looked like a common village girl playing dress-up. Lu Yu Tong walked past Ling Han without a word. The crowd assumed she didn't know him. How could a celestial being have anything to do with the trash? Shen Ziyan felt a wave of poisonous jealousy. This woman's beauty was a physical assault on her ego. She gritted her teeth, her heart burning with envy. Lu Yu Tong stopped directly in front of Shen Ziyan. Whack! A slap so loud it echoed off the academy walls. You! Shen Ziyan was stunned, her face stinging. She screamed and lunged forward, swinging her hand with the full power of the 9th layer of body refining. But what is a child to a master? Whack! Lu Yu Tong's hand moved faster than the eye could follow. A second, even more violent slap sent Shen Ziyan reeling. Her hair was a mess, her face was beginning to purple and swell, and her eyes were full of venomous shock. She screamed like a banshee and attacked again. Whack! 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 It was a massacre. Shen Ziyan was being slapped back and forth like a rag doll. She had zero ability to even touch the hem of Lu Yu Tong's robe. The crowd watched in horror. Who was this icy goddess? And why was she dismantling the academy's star pupil? Lu Yu Tong stared down at the broken girl and asked with a voice like a winter storm. What right do you have to be proud? You think you're a god-tier genius? Lu Yu Tong's voice was like a shard of ice cutting through the air. I am 17 years old, just like you. But I stand at the 9th layer of the element gathering tier. What the hell are you? The crowd didn't just gasp, they choked on the air. The 9th layer of element gathering. In Great Cloud Town, that wasn't just strength. That was the ceiling. That was the power of the absolute masters who ruled this dirt. Shen Ziyan was a prodigy, yes. In a century, Great Cloud Town might produce 2 or 3 kids who hit the 9th layer of body refining by 17. Names that would be carved into history. But compared to the girl standing in front of her, Shen Ziyan was a gutter-crawling insect. To reach Element Gathering's peak at 17, even in the capital of Rain Country, that was a monster that only appeared once in 100 years. Lu Yu Tong stopped hiding. She unleashed it, the raw, suffocating aura of a 9th layer Element Gathering warrior. The air grew heavy, thick with the weight of her power. Shen Ziyan, standing at the epicenter of the storm, felt her spirit break, her head snapped down, her body physically unable to withstand the pressure. For the arrogant, narcissistic Shen Ziyan, this was a living death. She fought to look up, her eyes a chaotic mess of terror, despair, and a shattering realization of her own worthlessness. Why? Why was there someone her age who was more beautiful, more talented, and more powerful than she could ever dream of being? And why was this goddess slapping her into the dirt? How dare you look down on him? Lu Yutong's hand whipped around, pointing directly at Ling Han. She glared back at the trembling girl. You're completely unqualified to even speak his name. The world stopped spinning. She's defending Ling Han? Disbelief turned into a physical ache in the chests of everyone watching. This noble, unparalleled beauty wasn't just acquainted with the trash, she was his shield. The men in the court felt a localized explosion of jealousy. They wanted to scream, to tear the world apart. How could he have someone like this? Shen Ziyan's teeth ground together so hard they nearly shattered. She couldn't touch Lu Yutong. The gap was too terrifying, so she poured every drop of her poison onto Ling Han. In her twisted mind, this was all his fault. He had baited her. He had mocked her just to set this goddess on her. She forgot that she was the one who threw the first insult. She forgot that if she had kept her mouth shut, he would have walked away. But narcissists don't reflect, they strike. In what way am I unqualified? She shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. He's a piece of trash. A pathetic, bottom-feeding piece of trash. Trash? Lu Yutong almost laughed. Had this girl seen a trash jump 2 layers in a single night? Had she seen a black-grade alchemist? A man who could buy this town 10 times over, begging to be his servant? A blind woman like you can't see the gold beneath the dust, Lu Yutong said, her irritation mounting. You threw away a miracle because you were too busy looking in a mirror. You don't deserve to see his light. Inside, Lu Yutong felt a sharp, bitter pang. Ling Han actually loved a woman this shallow? She'd never admit it was jealousy, never. Ha 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 ha. Shen Ziyan's laughter was a jagged edge. She pointed a shaking finger at Ling Han. He's gold. He's a pearl. What a sick joke. He is nothing, he is trash, and he will always be trash. In less than 3 months, Lu Yutong said, her voice dropping to a lethal, confident whisper, he will be someone all of you can only look up to from the mud. The crowd sneered. Defeating Cheng Hao was one thing, but Ling Han was still just a 4th-layer body-refining brat. To claim he would be a god in 3 months? It was insane. Lu Yutong's eyes widened. Her aura flared, a physical shockwave that slammed the mockery right back down their throats. Silence fell like a guillotine. Ling Han. You bastard. How dare you? A roar of pure, unadulterated fury tore through the silence as 2 figures charged into the court. It was Cheng Hao, his face still a purple mess, and beside him was his older brother, Cheng Shang. 19 years old, 9th layer of body refining. Compared to Shen Ziyan, he was a lesser talent, but in Grey Cloud Town, a 19-year-old at the peak of body refining was still a king. His heavy footsteps echoed like war drums. He stopped 3 meters from Ling Han, his face contorted. What despicable, cowardly tricks did you use on my brother? Cheng Shang spat. Ling Han smirked, a cold, dangerous glint in his eyes. So, I only won because I cheated? Of course. How else could a piece of filth like you touch a member of the Cheng clan? Cheng Shang bellowed. He had to say it. If Ling Han had won fairly, the Cheng name was dead. He had to rewrite the truth with Ling Han's blood. The crowd looked at Cheng Shang with pity. He called him trash, again. Did he not see the icy goddess standing right there? The one who had just dismantled Shen Ziyan for saying that exact word? Ling Han saw through the play immediately. And how, he asked slowly, do I prove I didn't use these tricks? You bullied my brother. As his blood, I'm going to break you for it. If you've got any balls left, spar with me. The crowd recoiled. How goddamn shameless. A 9th layer against a 4th layer. A 5-layer gap was a death sentence. But it was a brilliant, disgusting move. If Cheng Shang beat Ling Han within an inch of his life, the shame of Cheng Hao's loss would be washed away in Ling Han's blood. Ling Han's smile vanished. He shook his head. 9th layer versus the 4th? You call that a spar? I call that a pathetic excuse for a man? I don't care, if you're too scared, find someone to take your place. Cheng Shang laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. He knew Ling Han. The boy had no friends. No one would stand up for a loser. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone else in the court looked at Lu Yutong. They looked at the woman who could turn Cheng Shang into a red mist with a flick of her wrist. Cheng Shang was laughing, chest out, basking in his own brilliance. He had no idea he was sprinting headfirst into a meat grinder. Lu Yutong stepped forward, her voice a blade of frost. I will take his place. Cheng Shang had been so consumed by his visceral hatred for Ling Han that he hadn't truly processed her presence until now. The moment he looked at her, he froze. He had never seen such a lethal, breathtaking beauty in his life. But as the realization sank in that she was standing up for Ling Han, a jagged, poisonous jealousy tore through him. What right did a bottom feeder like Ling Han have to a woman like this? It was an insult to the heavens. Miss, you've clearly been deceived, Cheng Shang said, his voice dripping with fake concern. You must be new here. This pathetic worm is the laughingstock of the Ling clan. Everyone in this academy knows he is nothing but trash. A flicker of murderous heat ignited in Lu Yutong's eyes. Every time these insects opened their mouths to spit on Ling Han, she felt her own blood boil. Who are you to judge a god? Don't, Ling Han said, his voice calm yet absolute. He reached out and placed a hand firmly on Lu Yutong's shoulder, pulling her back. You dealt with a woman. But this is a man, and a debt between men is paid in blood. The courtyard went silent. Every male student felt a surge of pure, blinding envy. To see the trash touch their goddess so familiarly, and to see that she didn't recoil, but actually leaned into his presence, was enough to make them want to rip him apart. Lu Yutong bit her lip, her brow furrowed in genuine worry. Cheng Shang wasn't like his brother. He was at the 9th layer of body refining, 5 full tiers above Ling Han. She had seen Ling Han perform miracles, but this wasn't a gap, it was an abyss. In her mind, his chances weren't just low, they were zero. Trust me, Ling Han whispered, a small, cold smile playing on his lips. Have a little faith in your master. Fine, Cheng Shang barked, eager to end this. Let's see how long your charms last once I've ground your face into the pavement. Ling Han signaled for Lu Yutong to step back. As he turned toward Cheng Shang, the casual smile vanished. His eyes became sharp, calculating, and predatory. He knew the math. A 5-layer gap was a death sentence for anyone else. Even if Lu Yutong suppressed her power to the 4th layer, Cheng Shang would crush her. But Ling Han wasn't just using martial arts. He was using a suicide pact called Lone Wolf's Blood. It was a forbidden-style technique. Every time the user was broken, they would erupt with power that defied their cultivation. The more he bled, the more lethal he became. In his past life, he would have needed a mountain of pills to survive the backlash. Now, he had something better. The indestructible heaven scroll. Come then, Ling Han beckoned with a single, mocking finger. He had stripped away the pride of a heaven-tier sovereign. Right now, he was just a man willing to bleed to win. Cheng Shang didn't even bother with a stance. He began to circle Ling Han like a wolf eyeing a crippled sheep. Brother, tear the skin off him! Cheng Hao screamed from the sidelines, his face still a swollen mess of purple and rage. He wanted to see Ling Han suffer the same humiliation he had endured. Shen Ziyan stood beside him, her eyes burning with a silent, hateful prayer for Ling Han's destruction. Watch closely, Cheng Shang sneered, his lips curling into a sadistic grin. This is the price for defying the Cheng clan. He lunged. A heavy, bone-crushing punch screamed toward Ling Han's chest. Ling Han didn't dodge. He didn't use his predictive sight. He gritted his teeth, clenched his fist, and met the blow head-on. He's insane, someone shouted. A power-on-power collision between a 4th layer and a 9th. It was a suicide. Where was the genius who had dismantled Cheng Hao? Had he finally lost his mind? Even Lu Yutong felt her heart plummet. Pung! The fists collided. If time had frozen, you would have seen the shockwave ripple up Ling Han's arm like a violent tide. Crack, crack, crack. Arteries burst, and the skin from his knuckles to his shoulder shredded instantly. His arm was transformed into a mangled, bloody ruin in a heartbeat. The sheer force sent him staggering back 7 steps before he could plant his feet. Ha 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 ha. Trash stays in the dirt, Cheng Shang roared. He had bullied this boy for years. Did Ling Han really think he could change his fate? Ling Han's face remained a mask of stone. Internally, the indestructible heaven scroll was screaming, weaving his shattered tissues back together at a terrifying speed. Beneath the mask of gore, his arm was already healing. And as the blood spilled, the lone wolf's blood ignited. 5th layer of body refining, again, Ling Han roared, launching himself back into the fray. You never learn, Cheng Shang laughed, throwing another massive blow. Pung! Once again, Ling Han was sent reeling, his blood spraying the stones. His arm was mangled once more, the pain white-hot and blinding. But Cheng Zhang's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. His power, it just jumped? Ling Han didn't give him time to think. He pushed the indestructible heaven scroll to its limit, his eyes glowing with a feral, wolf-like intensity. 6th layer of body refining, injury upon injury, agony upon agony. Ling Han was a gladiator of pain. He threw himself at Cheng Shang again and again. Pung, 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 pung. The courtyard was a symphony of meat hitting meat. Ling Han was being systematically broken, his body a map of trauma, but every time he was knocked down, He rose faster. His attacks were getting faster, heavier, and more desperate. Seventh layer of body refining. The gap had shrunk to 2 layers. Cheng Shang was no longer laughing. He was sweating. He looked into Ling Han's eyes and saw a monster that thrived on suffering. He felt a cold, prickling fear. How can a piece of trash have this much kill intent? He realized he needed to end this now, or this trash was going to drag him into the abyss. Ling Han was a walking nightmare of gore. Every scrap of power he had clawed from the 7th layer of body refining had been paid for in shredded skin and cracked bone. He was a wounded predator. A lone wolf backed into a corner. The more he bled, the more his eyes burned with a terrifying, primal refusal to die. At first, the crowd had watched for the spectacle, the cheap thrill of a trash getting his due. But as they watched Ling Han get broken, mangled, and beaten, only to roar back into the fray every single time, the atmosphere shifted. Something raw and heavy settled over the courtyard. If Ling Han was trash, then he was a piece of trash that demanded their goddamn respect. Who among them had a soul this tempered? Who among them could spill their own lifeblood on the stones and still find the strength to spit in the face of a superior foe? Without realizing it, the tide of the crowd turned. The mockery died. The jeers vanished. In the brutal world of martial arts, the weak are ignored, but an unyielding warrior is a king. Ling Han was using his own agony to seize the one thing his predecessor had died without. Respect. This was why he had chosen this stupid path. No tricks. No predictive sight. Just a head-on, bone-shattering clash to prove that his spirit was forged in iron. Of course, the indestructible heaven scroll was screaming beneath his skin, knitting his life back together even as it was torn apart. The pain was real, a white-hot fire devouring his nerves. But it was that very torture that allowed him to erupt with the power of a demon. He slammed back return origin pills like they were candy, his origin power draining into a bottomless pit as he maintained his suicide charge. Again and again, he was blasted back, and again, he sprinted back into the teeth of the storm. Some of the girls in the crowd were openly weeping, their voices trembling as they begged him to just stay down. "Why won't you die?" Cheng Shang screamed, his voice cracking with panic. He was losing his mind. How was this possible? No matter how many times he crushed Ling Han's ribs or shredded his arms, the boy wouldn't fall. The pressure was suffocating. The 7th layer power Ling Han was throwing was starting to rattle Cheng Zhang's own organs, leaving his chest feeling like it was filled with boiling lead. Enough! Cheng Shang roared. He threw his dignity away and lunged with a killing move. Expert armed fist. Double peaks piercing the ear. The air whistled. A yellow-grade medium-level skill. It boosted his power by 50%. At this range, it was meant to shatter Ling Han's skull like an eggshell. Ling Han saw the move and his eyes flashed with the knowledge of 1,000 lifetimes. He couldn't use his heaven or earth grade techniques. His body would explode from the strain. But a yellow grade high-level skill? That, he could handle. He planted his feet, his muscles coiling like a predator's. Dashing panther fist. Pung. The collision sounded like a lightning strike. The two figures blurred. Only the elite students could see the exchange. To everyone else, it was a flash of red and silver. Then, a body was launched backward, tumbling through the air like a broken doll. The crowd inhaled so sharply it sounded like a collective hiss. It was Cheng Shang. He hit the ground and skidded across the stone, leaving a trail of dust and blood. Ling Han stood his ground. He was a vision of horror, drenched in crimson from head to toe, but he had only taken 3 steps back. The world went silent. A grand, impossible reversal. How? Cheng Shang had used a clan secret skill, yet he had been blown away as if he were nothing. They didn't know Ling Han had just unleashed a technique that doubled his power, a high-level skill that didn't exist in this backwater town. Only Lu Yutong understood. She had seen the 3 yin mysterious arts. To a man who possessed the techniques of the gods, a high-level yellow skill was just a toy. Cheng Shang groaned, his body twitching as he tried to claw his way up. But the internal damage was absolute. Every movement sent a fresh wave of blood geysering from his mouth. Ling Han's final blow had acted as a detonator, turning all the minor tremors Cheng Shang had sustained into a catastrophic organ failure. "No, this is a lie," Cheng Hao shrieked, his face white with terror. His brother, the genius, the pride of the clan, beaten by a piece of filth? Ling Han didn't answer. He walked toward the fallen genius. With every step, the indestructible heaven scroll finished its work. By the time he reached Cheng Shang, the bleeding had stopped. The mangled flesh was smooth. He stood over his enemy like a conqueror. I lose, Cheng Shang rasped, his eyes filled with a toxic, impotent hatred. Ling Han didn't speak. He slowly raised his boot and hovered it directly over Cheng Zhang's face. What? What are you doing? Terror finally broke through Cheng Zhang's pride. Don't you dare, don't go too far. Too far? Ling Han's voice was a low snarl. He slammed his boot down, grinding Cheng Zhang's face into the dirt. You, a 9th layer warrior, hunting a 4th layer boy. Was that too far, your brother telling me to crawl like a dog? Was that too far, you accusing me of cheating because your ego is too fragile to handle the truth? Was that too far? He ground his heel into the boy's cheek, the sound of muffled groans echoing through the court. In this world, the only logic is strength. Since your skills are garbage, shut your pathetic mouth. The crowd was paralyzed. They looked at Ling Han and remembered Lu Yutong's prophecy. In 3 months, you will all look up to him. They were looking up to him right now. Ling Han, you will regret this. I'll kill you for this. Cheng Shang hissed into the dirt, his voice muffled by the boot. Is that so? Ling Han smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing anyone had seen that day. Beg. Beg for your life with enough sincerity, and I might let you crawl home. Otherwise, you're going to be a permanent fixture of this courtyard. You, beg, Ling Han commanded, putting more weight onto the boy's skull until the bone began to groan. If you're not going to crawl into the dirt and beg for your life, then by all means, stay right there. Lying in the mud isn't exactly hard labor, is it? Ling Han's voice was like a cold wind blowing over a fresh grave. He had lived by a simple, brutal code. Return kindness tenfold, but if someone draws blood, you drown them in theirs. Cheng Shang and his brother had come to hunt a trash, so Ling Han would trample them until they were nothing but broken, laughingstock shells. Is lying down tiring? No, but when a boot is grinding your face into the gravel, exhaustion is the least of your problems. Cheng Zhang's jaw clamped shut so hard his gums burst, spraying a metallic tang of blood into his mouth. The sound of his teeth grinding together, ka, was audible to everyone in the silence. He wanted to rip Ling Han's throat out, but the pressure on his skull was absolute. He had to swallow his soul to save his skin. I'm sorry. Please, spare me, he rasped, the words tasting like ash. Speak up, Ling Han said, his voice flat and bored. I can't hear you over the sound of your pride shattering. I'm sorry. Spare me, Cheng Shang roared, his voice cracking. As the words left his lips, his spirit collapsed. The eldest young master of the Cheng clan, the future of his bloodline, had just been erased. His dignity didn't just break, it evaporated like a burst bubble. Be smarter in your next life, Ling Han said, finally lifting his boot. There are some people who exist purely to destroy you. Consider it a miracle I'm in a merciful mood today. Merciful? The crowd stood paralyzed. Cheng Shang wasn't some street thug. He was the face of a great clan. To humiliate him like this was a declaration of war. A blood feud was coming, a storm that would turn Great Cloud Town into a slaughterhouse. Shen Ziyan stood frozen, her teeth sinking into her lip until it bled. Her mind was a chaotic storm. She was a 9th layer genius, too. She had beaten veterans before, but looking at Ling Han, she felt a cold shiver of dread. What happens when this monster reaches the 9th layer? Who in the world of body refining could stand against him? He fought with the aura of an invincible sovereign. No, she lied to herself, desperate to keep her worldview intact. I don't regret it. He's still trash. He's a freak of nature who will never reach my height. Ling Han walked away from the blood-stained court, Lu Yutong trailing him like a silent shadow. They eventually found the shade of a massive tree and sat, the silence heavy between them. I never realized your taste was so pathetic. Lu Yutong finally snapped, her voice sharp with irritation. To think you actually wasted a heartbeat on a shallow, narcissistic girl like that. Ling Han let out a deep, boisterous laugh. He leaned back against the bark, looking at her. My little attendant, are you actually jealous? Who would be jealous of that? A crimson flush bloomed across her face, making her icy beauty flare with sudden, dangerous warmth. Don't flatter yourself. Careful, little girl. Is that any way to speak to your master? Ling Han teased. Breaking her stoic mask was becoming his favorite pastime. Lu Yutong rolled her eyes, her expression turning serious. Do you really plan to rot in Grey Cloud Town? This place is a puddle. You're a dragon. I'll head to Huyang Academy soon, Ling Han said, his eyes narrowing. My father wants me to go there and remind those geniuses what true power looks like. I plan to step on every arrogant face in the capital. Lu Yutong stared at him. You can't even beat me yet, and you want to topple the capital? I'm not even the strongest fighter there, Ling Han. We'll see, he said simply. He didn't need to boast. He knew what was sleeping inside his soul. When the sun finally dipped below the horizon, they returned to the Ling residence. You little monster. Ling Dongxing was striding through the hall, his face a mask of grim intensity. Ling Han braced for a lecture on skipping class, but his father suddenly lunged forward, nearly crushing him in a massive bear hug. He threw his head back and roared with laughter. You broke both of those Cheng brats and didn't even come home to tell me? You let your old man find out from the street gossip? Ling Han exhaled. How did you hear so fast? This is an earthquake, Hanner. Ling Dongxing's laughter died, replaced by a sharp, protective edge. The fourth layer defeating the ninth. It's too much. It's too fast. People will be terrified of you. And when people are terrified, they try to kill what they don't understand. Ling Han nodded. He was no longer a genius, he was a freak of nature, an anomaly. I put out the word that you were always at the seventh layer. That you were just hiding your power, his father continued. It was a flimsy lie, but the world finds hidden talent much easier to digest than impossible miracles. Stay home tomorrow, Ling Dongxing commanded. If an element gathering master looks at you, they'll see your true level and the lie dies. We need time. This suited Ling Han perfectly. He didn't need the academy, he needed to turn the lie into a reality. He needed the seventh layer, and he needed it now. He demanded funds, and under his orders, Lu Yutong vanished into the city. She returned hours later with a mountain of herbs and a heavy alchemy furnace. A bit risky for a fourth-layer brat, Ling Han muttered to himself. Concocting at this level was a death trap for most. Your origin power would run dry before the pill even formed. But he wasn't most. He would fuel the furnace with his own grit, taking return origin pills as he worked just to stay conscious. He began. His hands moved in a blur, separating stems and leaves with a precision that made Lu Yutong's eyes ache. She realized then, he wasn't just a scholar of alchemy, he was a practitioner. Ling Han fed the furnace, his snort echoing in the small room. He extended his palm, and with a violent surge of will, a searing flame erupted from his skin. Ignition. The fire of the soul. Concocting pills isn't just a craft, it is a war against the elements. Most fail because they cannot tame the fire. If you use common wood, the heat is a wild, unpredictable beast. You can't control it, and without control, you have nothing but ash. The higher the grade of the pill, the more the fire demands absolute, surgical precision. You have to be a master of the flame, and usually, your cultivation dictates your limits. An alchemist can typically only brew a pill one level above their own strength. For a brat in the body refining tier, Ling Han should have been limited to garbage tier yellow-grade pills. To even attempt a real concoction, the world says you need to be at the 7th layer of body refining just to survive the drain. But the world didn't know about the 5 elements mix chaos lotus. Ling Han's power wasn't a single stream, it was a flood that could transform into gold, wood, water, fire, or earth at his command. His heat topped out at 400 degrees. A pathetic spark compared to his past life. But for the little cloud and water pill, it was enough. The 5 elements are inexhaustible. Ling Han marveled. A normal fire spirit base at his level would struggle to hit 200 degrees. His current spirit base made the legendary 9 yang fire look like a flickering candle. It was a god-tier tool for an immortal task. His left hand blurred, spinning and directing heat into every crack of the furnace. He was playing the furnace like an instrument, knowing that in the future, he'd need a vessel forged in the blood of stars to handle his true power. He threw ingredients in with a violent, practiced speed, opening the lid, slamming it shut, his movements a jagged streak of motion. Lu Yutong watched from the shadows, her jaw dropped, her breath hitched. If she actually understood the laws of alchemy, if she knew that Ling Han was breaking every rule written in the scrolls by doing this at the 4th layer, she might have actually fainted. The heat climbed. The drain was agonizing. Ling Han's origin power was screaming, evaporating into the furnace. He slammed return origin pills into his mouth, chewing them like gravel, forcing the power back into his veins just to keep the fire alive. 2 hours of torture passed. Ling Han reached the breaking point. With a guttural roar, he bit down on his own tongue. Crack. Fresh, metallic blood sprayed his lips. Under the brutal stimulation of the lone wolf's blood, his power spiked, forced upward by sheer agony. The flames turned a lethal white, screaming up to 600 degrees. Pill completed. He ripped his hands back, the fire vanishing instantly. That final, bloody surge was the killing blow that perfected the medicine. He heaved the lid off, and a sharp, medicinal scent cut through the air. Lu Yutong lunged forward. Inside the furnace sat 17 vermilion spheres, sparkling like translucent jewels. They weren't just pills, they were masterpieces. You are a goddamned freak, she whispered, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. Ling Han let out a jagged laugh. Get used to it. He didn't waste a second, he swallowed a pill and dove into meditation. Boom! The pill hit his system like a physical explosion. The spiritual chi of the world rushed into him, a terrifying torrent of energy that would have shredded a normal man's veins. But the chaos lotus in his dantian was a bottomless abyss, drinking the storm, turning the raw chi into his own lethal origin power. He burned through 3 pills in a row, pushing his body until it simply gave up. He collapsed, his spirit exhausted, falling into a dead sleep right there on the cold floor. Lu Yutong sighed, a strange softness in her gaze. She lifted the monster onto his bed, pulled off his boots, and tucked him in before taking her post in the outer room. She wasn't just a follower, she was his shield. When the sun broke, Ling Han opened his eyes. He didn't care how he got to the bed, he only cared about the heat burning in his core. 5th layer of body refining. You did it again. Lu Yutong stood in the doorway, looking at him as if he were a ghost. Her voice was trembling. Another layer? In one night? It's just body refining, Ling Han said, his voice flat. This is normal. Normal? She nearly shrieked. It had taken her, a heaven-grade genius, 25 days to make that jump. He had done it in the time it took to have a dream. Are you going to hit the 6th layer tomorrow? Ling Han paused, calculating. No, Lu Yutong exhaled, her heart finally slowing down. But I'll hit it the day after, Ling Han added. Monster, she hissed, staring at him with a mix of resentment and pure wonder. She swore right then to never guess his speed again. If he hit the heavens by next week, she'd just nod and keep her mouth shut. Ling Han laughed and went back to work. He was in a race against time, and time was losing. Lu Yutong had once fooled herself into thinking that breaching the gushing spring tier at 19 was an achievement. In the annals of Rain Country, that speed was elite. But now, under Ling Han's shadow, the impossible had become her reality. She was going to shatter that barrier at 18. 2 years she had clawed back from the slow march of time. It was a miracle, a gift from the boy who defied every law of nature. But compared to Ling Han, her progress was a flickering candle next to a supernova. One night to leap from the 2nd layer to the 4th. One night to reach the 5th, 2 nights for the 6th. People spent decades, lifetimes, rotting in these tiers. Ling Han measured his evolution in hours. He was a freak, a demon in human skin. Ling Han only laughed at her shock, his voice cold and knowing. Fast? You think this is fast? There are beasts born into this world already at the element gathering tier. Some crawl from the womb at gushing spring. They are the heavens chosen, blessed with power before they even draw breath. Do such monsters really exist? Lu Yutong's voice was a whisper of dread. Of course. Ling Han's eyes drifted to a distant, bloody past. Records tell of creatures, now extinct, who were heaven tier at birth. They were born invincible. They were gods among beasts. If they were gods, why are they gone? Because the world has rules, Ling Han said, his voice dropping to a low, brutal rasp. Who can fight time? In my last life, I walked a path of fire and death just to keep from rotting. There are mysteries on this earth, shadows in the deep, that can erase a heaven-tier master like they were nothing but dust. 7 days of isolation. 7 days of grinding his spirit against the indestructible heaven scroll. Ling Han had walked this path before. Comprehension wasn't his hurdle, it was the raw accumulation of power. He reached the 6th layer with ease, but as he stared at the gap to the 7th, he let out a frustrated sigh. The leap to the 7th. It's a nuisance. It won't take 3 days. I'll need 4, maybe 5. Beside him, Lu Yutong felt a surge of pure, homicidal madness. 4 days? He's complaining about 4 days? 1 day. Early 6th layer. 2 days. Middle. 3 days. Late. 4 days. The peak. He didn't let it touch the 5th day. Within an hour of starting his breakthrough, he slammed through the gates of the 7th layer of body refining. A 16-year-old at the 7th layer was acceptable by Rain Country standards. But the truth, that he had surged from the 2nd layer to the 7th in 8 days, was a lie so big no one would ever believe it. Even Lu Yutong, who had watched him bleed for it, looked like she had been hit by a ghost. She walked with the glazed eyes of the traumatized. Finally, Ling Han growled, stretching his limbs. He felt like a tiger that had been caged in a dark room. Time to see my father. The Cheng clan should have smelled blood by now. He found Ling Dongxing in his study, His father's face a map of exhaustion and fury. The man didn't even look up, he was drowning in paperwork. The Chain clan made their move, didn't they? Ling Han asked. Ling Dongxing nodded grimly. It's bad. Our two lifelines, the copper mine and the medicine shop, are being strangled. The mine was a tomb of Ling clan warriors who had died to secure it 30 years ago. The medicine shop was the clan's pulse, reselling pills from the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. It was a simple trade, but it kept the clan alive. 5 days ago, the mine was hit by unknowns. Casualties are mounting. Now, no one will go down into the dark, even for double pay, his father rasped. And Alchemist Ma. That snake at the pavilion is suddenly experiencing delays. Our warehouse is empty. If we don't restock, the shop dies. Our reputation turns to ash. The clan was hemorrhaging gold. If this continued, they'd be forced to sell their soul just to keep the lights on. The Chain clan did this, Ling Han said, his voice flat. Of course they did. Ling Dongxing tapped the desk, his eyes burning with a cold light, and they had help, a traitor. Ling Zhongquan. Yes. Once the mine was hit, I changed the patrols. The enemy knew exactly where the holes were. Someone leaked the routes. The old bastard probably sold us out to the Chains the moment you broke their geniuses. He wants the clan head seat, and he doesn't care if it's covered in our blood. Ling Dongxing stood up, adjusting his robes. I have a lunch meeting with Alchemist Ma. I'll have to crawl and beg, give him whatever he wants. If I don't, we're finished. Alchemist Ma. Ma Da-jun? A strange, lethal smile touched Ling Han's lips. I'm coming with you, father. You need to cultivate, Hanner, unless you hit the 7th. Ling Dongxing finally looked up. He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes bulged. He let out a strangled, wet, poo sound, nearly choking on his own breath. He stared at his son as if the boy had just grown a second head. The 7th layer was no longer a goal, it was a reality. Hanner. You've already reached the 7th layer of body refining, Ling Dongxing stammered, his voice cracking. If anyone had told him yesterday that he would be reduced to a stuttering mess by the mere 7th layer, he would have slapped them for the insult. But now, he wanted to slap himself, to wake up from what had to be a hallucination. Yes, father. You can stop worrying now, Ling Han said, a calm, lethal smile playing on his lips. Ling Dongxing's face twitched. Then, a roar of laughter erupted from his chest, shaking the very walls of the study. The shadows that had suffocated him for days vanished in an instant. His son was a miracle. What did a few greedy clans or corrupt alchemists matter now? My son, my glorious son. He was trembling with a raw, primal pride. He finally saw it, the power to reach his wife, to tear her back from wherever she was held. Then tonight, we go together, Ling Dongxing declared. The clan head seat is yours one day. It's time you learned how to handle these vultures. Ling Han nodded, his smile deepening. He wasn't thinking about the seat. He was thinking about Alchemist Ma. He could already see the man's face turning ashen. The air in the private room at Zhan Yu House was thick with anticipation, until the door was kicked open. Bam! Ling Zhongquan and Ling Muyun strode in, their faces masks of unearned arrogance. What the hell are you doing here? Ling Dongxing snarled, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. The clan is burning. How could I stay away? Ling Zhongquan sat without waiting for an invitation, his eyes gleaming with treachery. Give it up, Dongxing. Step aside. I'm the only one who can fix this disaster. You? Ling Dongxing laughed, a cold, jagged sound. By what right? You've clearly offended Alchemist Ma. Why else would he strangle our supply? Ling Zhongquan sneered, gesturing toward his grandson. But Muyun here. He was examined yesterday. He has the fire. He's already been accepted as Alchemist Ma's apprentice. In a few years, he'll be a disciple. A full alchemist. Ling Muyun stood tall, his chest puffed out like a peacock. The most noble profession in Rain Country was within his grasp. He looked down his nose at Ling Han, ready to savor the look of defeat. Then, Ling Zhongquan's eyes drifted to Ling Han. Pooh! The old man gasped, his lungs seizing. He looked, rubbed his eyes, and looked again. No, it was a nightmare. The 7th layer. The trash who could barely crawl to the 2nd layer after years of effort was now standing there, radiating the aura of a 7th layer warrior? His wrinkled face began to twitch violently. The shock was a physical blow. Grandfather, what's wrong? Ling Muyun hissed. They were supposed to be humiliating them. Why was the old man acting like he'd seen a demon? 7th. The 7th layer. Ling Zhongquan choked out. Ling Muyun frowned. Yeah, I'm at the 7th layer. We knew that. Then he realized his grandfather wasn't pointing at him. He was pointing at Ling Han. What? Ling Muyun's heart skipped a beat. If Ling Han, the legendary trash, was at the 7th layer at 16, then what was Muyun, an 18-year-old at the same level? He'd be the real garbage? Impossible. It's a trick, Muyun screamed, his voice high and thin with desperation. But he knew his grandfather was an element-gathering master. There was no trickery that could fool those eyes. Ha ha. What do you think of my son now? Ling Dongxing's voice boomed with malicious joy. Good enough for Huyang Academy, wouldn't you say? The reminder stung like a whip. They had tried to steal that spot, only to find Ling Han was no longer a target they could hit. Who cares about the academy? Muyun spat, his face flushing a deep, ugly red. I'm an alchemist's apprentice. I will be the most respected man in this kingdom while you're still playing in the dirt. Is that so? Ling Han said, his voice terrifyingly calm. I can personally guarantee you will never be an apprentice. You will never even touch a furnace. Ha! Who do you think you are? You think you have a say in Alchemist Ma's house? Muyun sneered. If you're so powerful, why are we out of pills? Ling Han didn't answer. He just smiled. A predator waiting for the trap to spring. They sat in a toxic silence, waiting for the guest of honor. Finally, footsteps echoed in the hall. The door creaked open, and a medium-built man stepped in. Ma Da-jun, the only alchemist in Grey Cloud Town. Ling Dongxing, the traitorous grandfather, and Muyun all scrambled to their feet, bowing low. Muyun even dropped to his knees, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Master, your disciple greets you. Rise, Ma Da-jun said, his voice dismissive and cold. He didn't even look at the boy. He turned to Ling Dongxing. Don't waste my time with talk. I'm busy. Let's finish this. Master. Look. Muyun suddenly shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the corner. Look at this brat, Ling Han. He didn't even stand up, he's insulting your greatness. Ling Dongxing felt his blood run cold. He had come here to beg for the clan's life, and his own son was sitting there like a king while the man who held their future stood before them. He's a disgrace to the rules. Ling Zhongquan added, his voice full of poisonous glee. He could see it now, Alchemist Ma would erupt, and the Ling clan's main branch would be finished forever. Ling Muyun smelled blood, and he wasn't about to let go. His voice rose to a fever pitch of predatory aggression. An alchemist is a god in Rain Country. Their dignity is sacred. Yet you piece of filth, you stay rooted in your chair. You think you're above my master. He lunged forward, his face contorted. Kneel now and beg for the mercy of a punishment. Ling Dongxing's hands tightened into white-knuckled fists. He hated this. Ma Da-jun was only at the 9th layer of body refining, but his status as a yellow-grade alchemist made him a king among men. Even as an element-gathering warrior, Ling Dongxing had to swallow his pride to keep the clan alive. He rose, forcing his voice to remain steady. Alchemist Ma, I offer my deepest apologies. My son is young. Headstrong. Please, you are a man of vast greatness. Do not lower yourself to his level. Ma Da-jun hadn't even looked at the brat in the corner. But Muyun's screeching had successfully ignited his arrogance. His eyes narrowed with a toxic dissatisfaction. Ling clan head, you invited me here for a favor, and this is how you treat me? You let your spawn spit on my shadow? What kind of twisted logic is this? Ling Han, kneel, Ling Muyun shrieked, his eyes dancing with a sadistic glee. He could already see it. Ling Han being forced into the dirt by his own father's hand. The humiliation would be beautiful. He wanted to hear the sound of Ling Han's spirit breaking. Alchemist Ma. Ling Dongxing tried to intervene one last time. Ma Da-jun cut him off with a sharp, dismissive wave. He didn't even spare Ling Han a glance. Let the boy crawl over here and explain himself on his knees. Bam! Ling Dongxing's palm slammed onto the table, shattering the wood. Ma Da-jun, I know the Qing clan bought you. I know you're their lapdog. But don't you dare push me. You want my son to kneel? Get out. You've lost your mind. Ling Zhongquan bellowed, jumping to his feet. Dongxing, are you trying to murder this clan? You're throwing our future away for your ego. You aren't fit to lead. Who's throwing the future away? Ling Dongxing's voice was a low, guttural snarl. I stayed silent because we share a name. I let your treachery slide for the sake of the big picture. Would you come for my son? You think I'm already in the grave? Try me, old man. Enough. Ma Da-jun barked, his face red with fury. I don't have time for your pathetic family drama. Make the brat kneel, now. Ma Da-jun, a voice cut through the noise. It was calm, cold, lethal. Who exactly are you asking to kneel? Ling Han finally looked up. Ling Zhongquan and Mu Yun froze. Their hearts leapt with a dark, frantic joy. He did it. The fool actually called him by his name. They're dead. You piece of trash, Mu Yun screamed, desperate to prove his loyalty. To speak my master's name with your filthy mouth. Pa. The sound of the slap was like a whip crack. Ling Mu Yun didn't even see Ma Da-jun move. The alchemist had lunged across the room like a starved predator, his hand connecting with Mu Yun's face so hard the boy spun through the air. Mu Yun hit the floor, his brain rattling in his skull. He looked up, blood leaking from his lip, his eyes wide with a pathetic, mewling confusion. Even the two elders were paralyzed. Why? If he was going to hit someone, shouldn't it be Ling Han? Master? Mu Yun whimpered. But Ma Da-jun wasn't looking at him. The alchemist had scrambled toward Ling Han, his knees nearly giving out. He bowed so low his forehead almost touched the floor, his voice trembling with a raw, desperate terror. Young Master Han, please. Forgive my blindness. I had no idea it was you. I deserve to be struck down for my insolence. The room turned to ice. The three Lings entered a state of pure, petrified shock. This was Ma Da-jun, the arrogant, untouchable alchemist. And he was groveling like a whipped dog. He had called Ling Han, Young Master Han. This is your disciple? Ling Han asked. His voice was a quiet, terrifying murmur. How overbearing. Ma Da-jun's heart nearly stopped. He spun around and delivered another brutal, bone-shaking slap to the cowering Ling Mu Yun. Who do you think you are, to dare breathe the same air as young Master Han with such disrespect? I have no such disciple. From this moment on, if you ever call me master again, I will cut your tongue out. Ling Mu Yun's face went ashen. His world collapsed. The academy was gone. Now his future as an alchemist was being ripped away because of a single word from the trash. No, master, please, give me another chance. He threw himself at Ma Da-jun's feet, sobbing, clawing at the man's robes. This was his last lifeline. Get away from me. Ma Da-jun kicked him back with a snort of disgust. You insulted young Master Han. You're lucky I don't kill you where you stand. You want to be an alchemist? After what you've done, there isn't an alchemist in Rain Country who would even let you scrub their floors. Ling Mu Yun collapsed, his eyes glazed and hollow. He looked like a man who had already died. Take him out, Ling Zhongquan hissed, grabbing his grandson. He knew the game was up. To stay was to drown in their own shame. As they were dragged away, Mu Yun's incoherent screams of, I'm an alchemist, faded into the distance. In the silent room, Ling Dongxing stood frozen, unable to process the reality before him. Ma Da-jun, meanwhile, was drenched in a cold, oily sweat. You were quite the lion when you were facing my father just now, Ling Han said, the dissatisfaction in his voice as heavy as a mountain. Ma Da-jun's face contorted in agony. Young Master Han, I didn't know. I swear on my life, I didn't know he was your father. I am a fool. I am worthless. He took a breath, steeled his nerves, and began to savagely slap his own face, over and over again, the wet thud of skin on skin echoing through the room. Ling Dongxing was no longer just surprised, he was physically numb. He knew his son was a genius now. He had seen the power. But to witness a high and mighty alchemist, a man who usually treated the world like dirt beneath his fingernails, fawning, groveling, and desperately clawing for favor, it was too much to process. Before tonight, Ma Da-jun had been a wall of pure arrogance. Ling Dongxing had practically begged for this dinner, and Ma Da-jun had arrived looking for flaws, eager to humiliate him. He had wielded his status like a jagged blade. But now, the great alchemist looked like he was one word away from a heart attack. What in the name of the heavens happened to my son in these last few days? Ling clan head, I truly deserve death for my stupidity, Ma Da-jun stammered, his voice hushed and cautious, as if speaking too loud might shatter his own skull. Please, rest easy. The medicine supply will be at your gates the moment I return. Every time Ma Da-jun looked at Ling Dongxing now, his heart hammered against his ribs, he was terrified. Ling Han tapped a single finger on the table, the sound echoing like a death knell. The Cheng clan. They bought you, didn't they? Young Master Han, I was deceived. I didn't know the clan head was your father, Ma Da-jun babbled, sweat pouring down his face. You have to believe me. Ling Han smiled. It wasn't a warm expression. I believe you. You're a greedy man, Ma Da-jun. A man with your lack of character doesn't do favors for free. Tell me, what was the price of our destruction? Ma Da-jun tensed, his eyes darting toward the door, but Ling Han's gaze pinned him to the chair. 30,000 silver coins, he choked out. 30,000. Ling Dongxing's snort was a jagged burst of fury. He knew exactly what that meant. For clans like the Ling or the Cheng, who spent as much as they earned on cultivation, 30,000 was a fortune. It was years of blood, sweat, and careful hoarding. The Cheng clan hadn't just been playing games, they had emptied their war chest to cut the Ling clan's throat. Usually, to flip an alchemist, you'd have to double the bribe. But the Ling clan was broke. The Chengs had hit them with a fatal wound. Thank the gods for my son, Ling Dongxing thought, a dark smile touching his lips. The Chengs had thrown 30,000 silver coins into a furnace for absolutely nothing. 30,000. Quite a sum, Ling Han said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Alchemists really are a luxury, aren't they? Young Master Han, you're joking, Ma Da-jun wiped his brow, his hand shaking. Because of your deception, my clan has suffered, Ling Han continued serenely. We've lost money. We've lost face. Ma Da-jun shivered. A flash of survival instinct hit his brain. The Cheng clan started it, but the fault is mine. I will hand over those 30,000 coins to the Ling clan. As compensation, every single coin. Ling Dongxing was floored. A man as famously greedy as Ma Da-jun was giving up the loot. Just how much does he fear my son? Ling Han nodded. You're sure? This isn't a problem for you? A problem? Never. Ma Da-jun's smile was pained. His heart practically bleeding at the loss of the silver. But his fear of Ling Han won out. It's a small token of my sincere feelings. Good, Ling Han said. Now, do something else for me. From tomorrow, take the pills you usually give to the Cheng clan and redirect them to us. All of them. Ling Dongxing's heart leapt. Alchemical pills were their lifeblood. If they doubled their supply while the Cheng's supply was cut in half, the balance of power in Great Cloud Town would shift forever. Within years, the Cheng clan would be a memory, and the Ling clan would be the sole masters of this land. Yes, of course, it's done, Ma Da-jun said. It cost him nothing to sign a few papers and screw over the Chengs. Nope, benefits, in exchange? Ling Han teased. Ma Da-jun let out a dry, rattling laugh. Young Master Han, you really are a joker. Fine. I'm done with you. Get to work, Ling Han said, dismissing him with a wave. Ma Da-jun didn't wait. He bowed to the son, then to the father, and practically sprinted backward out of the room. Hanner, Ling Dongxing said, finally letting out his breath. Is it wise to be so blunt? He's still an alchemist. If we push too hard, he might bite back. Don't worry, father, Ling Han said, leaning back. Men like him only understand two things. The boot and the coin. If you're soft, they'll eat you alive. If you're the boot, they'll lick your souls. Ling Dongxing didn't ask how his son had gained this terrifying authority. His boy was a man now, with secrets of his own. All he needed to do was lead the counterattack. Outside the restaurant, Ling Zhongquan and his grandson were waiting in the shadows. When they saw Ma Da-jun emerge, they rushed forward. Alchemist Ma. Ling Zhongquan pleaded with a greasy, flattering smile. Please, about Mu Yun. They're cousins. Surely you can be accommodating? Let him return to your side? Ma Da-jun stopped. In front of Ling Han, he was a dog. In front of these two, he was a king again. He snorted with pure derision. Chief Butler Ling, I don't make the rules anymore, Ma Da-jun said, his voice cold. If you want your grandson to ever touch a furnace again, don't talk to me. Go beg for young Master Han's mercy. If he says no, then it's over. No alchemist in this kingdom will ever dare to take him. What? The grandfather and grandson froze, their faces pale in the moonlight. The trash has that kind of power. Believe it or don't, I don't care, Ma Da-jun said, waving them away. But here's some advice. Stop fighting him. You have no idea how lucky you are to share his name. If you were smart, you'd crawl to him and apologize. He looked at them with pity. They had no idea. Ling Han was a man that even the great Grandmaster Zhu Hixin treated with reverence. Just as Ma Da-jun had warned, this treachery was no longer his burden to carry. He fled into the night, desperate to satisfy Ling Han's demands before the monster lost his patience. Grandfather, are we really going to do it? Ling Mu Yun hissed, his teeth grinding with a sound like breaking stones. The humiliation was a living thing, clawing at his throat. Are we really going to bow our heads to that piece of trash? To obey his every whim? It makes me sick. I feel like a fool just breathing the same air as them? Of course not. Ling Zhongquan's hand chopped through the air, a violent, jagged motion. I have bled for this clan for decades. Do you think I will let years of labor be torched by a boy who was crawling in the dirt yesterday? Whether he's been hiding his power or found some unholy miracle, he will not stand in my way. The Ling clan belongs to me. But what do we do? Mu Yun's voice was hollow, dazed by the speed of his own downfall. We wait, the old man growled, his voice a low, lethal vibration. The Cheng clan is a cornered beast. Ling Dongxing thinks he has won because he has the alchemist's support, but he has forgotten that a cornered beast fights with its life. They will strike, and they will strike hard. And when they do, Ling Zhongquan's lips curled into a poisonous sneer, we will drive a blade into Ling Dongxing's back. We will shove him off that throne and into the grave. Mu Yun's eyes lit up, the rage in them turning into a cold, murderous fire. Grandfather. That brat, Ling Han. Give him to me. I want to be the one to open his throat. I want to watch the life leave his eyes. You will have your wish, Ling Zhongquan whispered, I promise you. The next morning, the mystery of Ma Dajun's terror was finally solved. Zhu Yixin arrived at the Ling residence. Ling Dongxing stood frozen as he watched the scene. A black-grade alchemist. A man who could make king's bow, stood with his hands at his sides like a trembling schoolboy in front of his son. If Ma Dajun's groveling was a shock, this was an earthquake. A black-grade master? Reverent? It defied every logic of the martial world. But Zhu Yixin hadn't come to play politics. He had come with a scent of blood and opportunity. There is news, the old alchemist whispered. Earth dragon grass. It has been sighted in the Seven Wind Mountains. Ling Han's heart thundered. He had sent Lu Yutong to hunt for the components of the Restore Spirit Pill. An earth-grade miracle that could fix his father's shattered spirit base. Earth dragon grass was the keystone. Without it, his father would remain a broken warrior. But as the details emerged, the joy turned to a grim, cold reality. The man who brought the news, a warrior of the 9th layer of element gathering, had been found shredded, his life leaking into the dirt. He had gasped 3 words before dying. Cave. Giant red snake. Earth dragon grass. Ling Han knew exactly what that meant. A red-scaled dragon snake. It wasn't just a beast, it was a nightmare. It guarded the grass to breathe in its weak dragon chi, slowly evolving into something godlike. A mature one was the king of the element gathering tier, stronger, faster, and more lethal than any human. At Ling Han's current level, entering that cave was a suicide pact. Even with Lu Yutong, they would be nothing but a snack for the serpent. I will go, Ling Han murmured, his eyes narrowing, but not today. He needed the element gathering tier. He needed the power to hunt the hunter. He wanted that snake's inner core to refine a transcending origin pill, and its flesh, rich with dragon blood, to fuel his indestructible heaven scroll. He would devour the beast to build his own legend. But more than power, he needed foundation. In his past life, he had reached the heaven tier as an Alchemy Emperor, but he had been a paper tiger. He had used pills to bypass the struggle. He had crushed enemies with raw cultivation levels, never truly mastering the art of the kill. Among the 7 heaven tier sovereigns, he was the weakest in a real fight. No more, he thought, his jaw tightening. I will not be a hollow god again. He threw himself into the fire of training. He didn't just want to win. He wanted to dominate. He reached back into his memories for the low-level techniques he had once ignored. Shocking electricity sword arts. Flying fire palm arts. Dashing panther fist. Exiting cloud step. In his past life, he had been too busy with the furnace to master these. He had been a genius of theory, but a novice of the blade. Now, with a body that was young and a spirit that was ancient, he began to refine them. He started with the sword, the weapon of the cold and the decisive. He would take every step firmly. He would bleed in practice so he could laugh in battle. The 7 Wind Mountains were waiting, and when he arrived, he wouldn't just be an alchemist, he would be a storm. Ling Han was done playing games in the courtyard. To sharpen a blade, you don't rub it against silk. You grind it against stone. He was heading for Balance Mountain. It was a jagged stretch of earth north of the town, 80 kilometers of primitive wilderness. It wasn't the 7 Wind Mountains. It didn't house the gods of the demonic beast world. But it was a meat grinder for anyone in the body refining tier. The deepest shadows of Balance Mountain held beasts of the element gathering tier, kings of their own small, bloody domains. Ling Han knew that breathing exercises and forms were just theater. To truly master a martial art, you had to stand in the path of a predator and smell its breath. You had to kill, or be killed. Ling Dongxing hated it. He wanted to keep his son in a cage of safety, but he knew the truth. A warrior raised in a greenhouse is just fodder for the first storm. With Lu Yutong as a silent, lethal shadow by Ling Han's side, He let them go. He had his own war to wage anyway, tearing back the clan power from the traitorous Ling Zhongquan. The duo set off. They carried simple bundles, but the weight of them made Ling Han snarl inwardly. He missed the spatial rings of his past life. Those ancient artifacts that could swallow a mountain's worth of supplies into a single band of gold. They were rare now, relics that only the flower blossom tier masters could hold without getting murdered for them. They moved with the relentless pace of martial artists. 80 kilometers was a morning stroll. By noon, the air changed. It became heavy, smelling of damp earth, rotted leaves, and the musk of things that hunt in the dark. Stay back, Ling Han commanded as they crossed the threshold into the deep woods. If it's in the body refining tier, it's mine, don't touch it. As you wish, Lu Yutong replied, her voice as cold as the mountain air. They hunted. Hours bled into the afternoon. The mountain was stingy today. Not even a rabbit crossed their path. As the sun began to sink, casting long, skeletal shadows through the trees, the hunger began to gnaw. They hadn't brought rations, they had come to eat what they killed. Ling Han unsheathed his iron sword. 10 silver coins, a fortune for a commoner, but a cheap toy in the hands of a master. It would bite through flesh, but it would shatter against the hide of an element-gathering beast. Suddenly, Lu Yutong froze. What is it? A track? Ling Han asked, his blood beginning to hum. My shoelace, she said, crouching down. Ling Han stared at her. The Ice Queen had a sense of humor. He waited, and they moved on. 10 minutes later, she crouched again. Another shoelace? No, she whispered, her eyes turning into flint. Something's coming. The shrubs ahead didn't just shake, they exploded. A head the size of a boulder shoved through the greenery, followed by a body like a water buffalo. It was a rotten blood wolf. Its hide was a sickening, bruised crimson, covered in weeping, necrotic scars. It smelled of iron and decay. Perfect, Ling Han murmured. His eyes didn't just light up, they burned. The indestructible heaven scroll demanded the blood of powerful beasts to fuel its evolution. This wolf, a ninth-layer body-refining nightmare, was exactly the sacrifice he needed. Be careful, Lu Yutong warned. A beast like that has twice the strength of a man. One mistake and you're not a warrior, you're a meal. Watch me, Ling Han said. He stepped forward, the iron sword light in his hand. The wolf growled, a low vibration that shook the leaves. It saw the girl and felt the cold threat of her power. But the hunger was a madness. It shifted its weight, its claws carving deep furrows into the dirt. It saw the boy, the weak one, and prepared to tear him apart. Step back, Yu Tong. Further, Ling Han ordered. It won't commit if it thinks you're going to jump in. She hesitated, then retreated. The wolf's predatory gaze locked onto Ling Han. It bared teeth like rusted daggers, strings of viscous saliva dripping to the moss. Ling Han crooked a finger, a mocking, lethal gesture. Come on, you oversized mutt. Show me what you've got. Ow, the wolf lunged. It was a blur of rotted fur and bone-snapping force. Ling Han didn't flinch, he didn't even breathe, he swung. Shocking electricity sword arts. Shua. The air screamed. A single thrust, but 2 flashes of light tore through the dim forest. One was the cold steel of the blade. The other was a jagged, translucent streak of pure lethality. Sword chi. Lu Yutong gasped, her composure finally shattering. Sword chi. The mark of a true swordsman. It took geniuses 5-10 years to manifest a sliver of it. And here was this 16-year-old boy, casually flicking it into existence like it was nothing. Ling Han felt no pride. Sword chi was just the beginning. He wanted sword ray, the solid, condensed essence of the blade. He wanted the sword heart. In his last life, he was a king of pills, but a novice of the edge. This time, he would be both. The wolf didn't know about sword grades or ancient legacies. It only knew that the air had just turned into a razor. The forest was no longer a training ground, it was an altar of blood. Ling Han's sword didn't just move, it sang. Under the influence of the shocking electricity sword arts, he became a blur of lethal intent. His exiting cloud step was jagged and unpredictable. A dance of sudden retreats and violent lunges that left the air trembling in his wake. Lu Yutong watched, her breath hitching. She knew the truth of the martial world. A human usually needs a cultivation advantage to kill a beast. But Ling Han, he was 2 layers below the wolf, yet he was playing with it. He wasn't just fighting, he was making up for a lifetime of hollow alchemy by forging a soul of steel. The rotten blood wolf was no fool. It saw its own blood painting the moss. It saw the weak human grow stronger with every heartbeat. It tried to howl, to flee, but the cage of steel was already closed. No escape. Ling Han's roar was raw, primal. He thrust his blade. Shua, not one, but two flashes of jagged sword chi tore through the darkness. The breakthrough was instantaneous. The wolf didn't even have time to whimper before the twin streaks of energy shredded its throat. Its massive body hit the dirt with a sickening thud, its eyes frozen in a final, terrifying realization. It had been hunted by a monster. Night fell like a heavy shroud. By the brook, the scent of roasting meat mingled with something darker, the metallic tang of beast blood. Ling Han didn't waste a drop. He sat in a basin of the wolf's gore, his skin glistening crimson under the moonlight. As he circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, the blood didn't just sit on his skin. It was devoured. The essence was ripped from the fluid, turning the thick, dark ichor into clear, useless water in minutes. He felt his muscles knit tighter, his skin turning into something that wasn't quite human. It was the dead tree tear. Passive, permanent, brutal. In his last life, he was a paper tiger who could be killed in his sleep. In this life, his skin would break the stones that tried to crush him. Days bled into one another. The mountain gave up its secrets and its predators. On the fourth day, the forest opened into a clearing where 5 young warriors sat, broken and bloodied. They were geniuses of Guo Rock Town, led by a confident youth named Lu Dong. They had found a green spiritual fruit, a natural miracle that could catapult a 9th layer warrior into the element gathering tier without the toxic rot of alchemical impurities. Interested in a deal? Lu Dong asked, eyeing Ling Han's calm demeanor. Depends, Ling Han replied, his voice raspy from days of silence and slaughter. What's guarding it? A miasma cloud beast, Zhou Chong spat. 9th layer. The damn thing breathes poison. You can't kill what you can't breathe near. Ling Han understood. A battle against a miasma beast was a race against your own lungs. Unless you could end it in a heartbeat, the fog would turn your blood to lead. Suddenly, one of them, a youth named Li Hao, stood up. He unsheathed a heavy saber, his eyes flashing with a petty, arrogant need to dominate. If you want in, you prove your worth, Li Hao growled, the steel of his blade catching the dim light. Take one strike from my saber. If you don't break, maybe we'll talk. He wasn't looking for a partner, he was looking for a victim to boost his own ego. Be careful, Zhu Shuiyi warned, her voice tight with a fear she couldn't quite hide. He is the saber maniac. 9th layer. He doesn't know how to pull a punch once his blade is out. If you aren't at least at the 7th layer, don't take him head on. You'll be cleaved in two. Ling Han didn't flinch. He didn't even look worried. He just offered a thin, lethal smile. One strike? That's all it takes to prove I belong? Just one, Li Hao spat. He stood like a predator, his hand white-knuckled on the hilt of his saber. He looked every bit the master, his focus narrowing until the world was nothing but the space between him and Ling Han's throat. Then, he moved. Shua. The saber left its sheath in a blur of silver, a full power slash intended to end the conversation right then and there. Ding! Sparks sprayed like blood against the dim light. Ling Han's sword had met the heavy blade, but he didn't try to stop the momentum. Instead, he let his sword slide, a screeching, metallic scrape from the saber's tip down to its hilt. It was a masterclass in redirection. The weight of the 9th layer strike was bled into the air, vanishing into nothing. Li Hao froze. His perfect strike had been discarded like trash. The group stood in a stunned, suffocating silence. Ling Han was clearly 7th layer, yet he had just dismantled a 9th layer maniac with a flick of his wrist. You pass, Li Hao managed to say, his arrogance masking a tremor in his voice. Ling Han didn't move his sword back. He flicked the blade, the ring of the steel clear and mocking. Now, you take one from me. You're testing me, Li Hao laughed, though it sounded forced. Fine. Let's see what a 7th layer can do. Ling Han's arm blurred. The sword pierced forward, a needle of cold light aimed straight for Li Hao's neck. Li Hao roared and brought his saber up in a frantic block. Ding! The blade stopped a hair's breadth from Li Hao's throat. You've lost, Ling Han said, withdrawing his weapon. Lost? I blocked you? Li Hao snarled, his face flushing. Ling Han didn't argue. He simply flicked the sword again. From the tip of the steel, a jagged ray of white light hissed through the air. Sword chi! Lu Dong screamed. Li Hao's face went pale. If that chi had been released a second earlier, his head would be rolling in the dirt. He bowed his head, the weight of the realization crushing his pride. I've lost. The maniac didn't give up, though. He wanted to feel it, the power of a true swordsman. They sparred for 10 minutes, a brutal exchange that left Li Hao covered in a dozen shallow, bleeding cuts. He surrendered before he could lose any more blood, his eyes wide with a new, frantic respect. Sword Qi. It's terrifying, Li Hao whispered. Zhu Shuiyi and the others were radiant with hope. With a monster like Ling Han on their side, that green spiritual fruit was as good as theirs. They marched for an hour, the air growing thick and moist until they reached a cave that smelled of rot and ancient death. Inside, they saw it. A meter-tall stem, leafless, bearing 7 glowing fruits. Don't move yet, Zhou Chong whispered. The miasma cloud beast is in there. We move, it breathes, we die. We had to hold our breath and draw it out. The plan was set in stone. The 5 men would form a wall of steel to hold the beast. The 2 women, Zhu Shuiyi and the mysterious Lu Yutong, would sprint in and harvest the prize. Gra! The beast thundered out of the cave. It looked like a nightmare version of a wild boar. Its hide covered in pulsing air sacs that belched a thick, gray fog. Its tusks were like spears of bone, dripping with venomous saliva. Go! Zhou Chong screamed. The 4 warriors from Guo Rocktown lunged, their weapons clashing against the beast's hide. But the fog was everywhere. Their lungs burned. Their vision blurred. They were losing, and they were losing fast. Where is he? Li Hao coughed, looking back. Ling Han was standing still, motionless, like a statue of ice. They felt a surge of betrayal. He's letting us die. Shua. Then, Ling Han moved. He didn't run. He vanished. His sword was no longer a piece of metal. It was a streak of lightning. This sword move was a masterpiece of cold, calculated violence. Ling Han hadn't been standing still out of fear. He had been waiting for the exact microsecond the miasma cloud beast's guard faltered under the desperate assault of the others. Shua. The iron sword sang. To the observers, it looked as if a deity had descended to deliver a divine execution. With a sickening pooh, the blade didn't just strike. It vanished into the beast's right eye, driving through soft tissue and bone until the hilt slammed against the creature's skull. Pung! The massive carcass hit the earth with a finality that silenced the forest. One blow. One of the deadliest predators of the body-refining tier had been snuffed out like a candle in a gale. What? Gods above! Lu Dong and the others stood frozen, their lungs burning from the miasma they had accidentally inhaled in their shock. They scrambled back, desperately circulating their origin power to purge the poison before it could melt their internal organs. I thought you were paralyzed with terror, Lu Dong gasped, clapping a trembling hand on Ling Han's shoulder once he could breathe. But that strike, it was too fast, too clean. Li Hao, the saber maniac, was vibrating with a frantic, obsessive energy. To kill it in one blow. Brother Ling, you are a monster. Ling Han offered nothing but a quiet, knowing smile. He knew the truth. In the lower tiers, a sharp mind in a perfect moment could bridge any gap. If he had faced the beast head-on without the distraction of the others, he would be fighting for his life. But he wasn't interested in fair fights. He was interested in results. They harvested the 7 green spiritual fruits, the air finally clearing. But just as the tension began to bleed away, a voice as cold as a grave cut through the clearing. Leave the fruits. Now. 2 figures emerged. A young man, barely 20, arrogant and preening, followed by an old man whose white hair and bent back screamed of ancient, hidden power. Ling Han's eyes narrowed. He didn't need a name to see the truth. The boy was 9th layer body refining, but the old man was a 9th layer element gathering master. Who do you think you are? Lu Dong roared, his pride resurfacing. The young man, Hang Zan, let out a jagged laugh. His eyes crawled over Zhu Shuiyi's body with a revolting, covetous hunger. You don't know me? I am the eldest grandson of the 7th elder of the Stone Wolf sect. The name hit them like a physical blow. Dread pooled in the stomachs of the Guo Rocktown warriors. In Rain Country, a sect meant one thing. They possessed masters of the gushing spring tier. The Stone Wolf sect was the undisputed butcher of this region. Now you understand? Hang Zan sneered. Leave the fruits. Each of you will break one of your own arms and crawl away. But these 2 girls, they stay with me. A martial artist who breaks his own arm destroys his own soul. Zhu Shuiyi began to shake, her face a mask of fury and absolute terror. Resistance is a death sentence, Hang Zan whispered. Elder Yu, show them the abyss. The old man stepped forward. With every inch he moved, his bent spine straightened. His aura exploded, a suffocating, crushing pressure that turned the air into lead. The 9th layer of element gathering. Against a few body-refining youths, he was a god among ants. You, Hang Zan pointed a trembling, excited finger at Lu Yutong. Take off the veil. If your face doesn't match your body, I'll kill you for wasting my time. Lu Yutong didn't move. She didn't blink. She only looked at Ling Han. When she saw the calm, predatory smile on his face, she reached up. The veil fell. The clearing seemed to catch fire. Her beauty was a weapon, cold, devastating, and aristocratic. It was the kind of face that launched wars and burned empires. Hang Zan's breath hitched. His eyes bulged, a frantic, lustful light dancing in them. Beauty, come here, to me. He reached out, expecting her to crawl. But then, the old man, Elder Yu, let out a sharp, terrified hiss. He stepped in front of his master, his wrinkled face contorted in sudden, absolute gravity. Young master. Be careful, the old man rasped, his voice trembling. She is in the element gathering tier. The world stopped. Elder Yu couldn't sense her exact level, she was too far above him. But the mere fact that this beauty was a master of the same tier as him sent a jolt of pure lightning through the group.